Chords and coffee from the store. Here we go. Let's pick us out a guitar. First of all, I'll tell you what, let me run by here, show you the folks. Emmy McWoods, ladies and gentlemen. Killer musician. Speaking of killer musicians, Elijah Perkins, look at him. And then you got old Spencer Tice, Stereo Ice. And wait a minute. Marla. I work with some of the best people in the entire universe. What guitar are we gonna play today? Well, thinking about going in this Taylor room here, and let's get us a Taylor today. Which one? You know what? This. I love these, the T5s, the T5Zs. I'm gonna play this thing. I think a common misconception with this guitar is that people look at it and go, well, it doesn't sound like an acoustic guitar. It's not supposed to, it's its own thing. It's its own thing, you know what I mean? Isn't that right, Amber? It's its own thing.
Yep.
All right, let's go up to the cabin. We are going to discuss today, had a fantastic conversation with a friend of mine who was coming out of a guitar lesson. One of my favorite things to do when someone gets out of a lesson is I'll say, what'd you work on? And my buddy Michael said, well, we're working on double stops. And so double stops, pentatonic scale. What are double stops? How do we do them? When do we do them? Where do we do them? And why? Here it comes. All right, pentatonic double stops. Take you a quick drink. Double stops. I believe that terminology comes from the violin world, and guitar players just kind of ganked it for ourselves, and it basically just means playing two notes at once, right? Most of the time, and I can say this about my own life, the first time I encountered this kind of thing was when I was hearing what I would call just, the Hendrixy kind of double stop stuff. That kind of stuff. Too much reverb? I like it. Comment below. Anyway, that was the first time I heard it. And I honestly, I think it was that, and maybe there was a I can't remember if it was junior or senior year of high school. I didn't pick up a guitar till I was 16 years old, and I was slow to find Hendrix, but I was already pretty head over heels with the Beatles music, right? And I remember Octopus's Garden had that kind of vibe to it. Don't Let Me Down had like some little licks like that in it, and then of course later, Hey Joe, When Cries Mary, May This Be Love, all Jimi Hendrix stuff. And then I remember hearing, what was it? Black by Pearl Jam. And there was a lot of that little, that kind of stuff in it, right? Those are double stops, right? So what I want to do is I'm going to show you a couple things. Number one, I want to show you double stops in that fashion with that dialect, for lack of a better term. And then please comment questions as you watch this, especially if there's like, well, where would I do that? Or give me an application. These that I'm about to show you, I would encourage you to go on YouTube and let's just pick a key of D. I love the key of D. It sounds great on guitar. So key of D it is. B minor pentatonic is where we're going to work out of, okay? So I would encourage you to find any D major, D ballad, D major track, something mid-tempo that you can just kind of practice and kind of just wiggle these around on the guitar neck and noodle with it until you find something where you're like, hey, I feel confident in that, right? Just like anything else, you learn a new word, you got to try to wedge it in a sentence. And the first time you use it, people who know and love you are going to know, hey, you learned a new word today. I've never heard you say that, right? Well, that's okay. Just keep trying to get it in there, learn it, use it, look it up again as soon as you forget what it means. And then after a while, before you know it, it's just part of your normal everyday speech, right? Same deal with this. So let's get started. So what I like to do is I like to show you this going down because I feel like it's easier. So we're going to start on the high E and the B string, 10th fret, okay? Pinky and ring. Pinky on the 10th fret of the high E, ring on the B. And so what we're going to do is on the bottom half of the pentatonic scale, if you sort of visualize the scale here, this kind of little, almost looks like a G chord, right? Right here, you sort of visualize that. All of these guys down here are gonna have 2 fingers playing them, and then everything happening up here, which is basically a straight line, right? This, you know, box 1 pentatonic pattern, right? It's just gonna be 1 finger, right? I saw somewhere on YouTube the other day, John Mayer was doing a lesson, and I think he calls this the pentatonic equator. Comment below if you know more about that. Love John Mayer. I was just kind of scrolling through. I forget what I was looking for, and I just noticed that, and I thought I need to go watch that later. But anyway, this little pentatonic equator we're going to do with just 1 finger. Okay, so high E and B, pinky and ring, okay? And then we're going to come down here, and that's the 10th fret. And then we're going to come down here to 1 finger on the 7th fret, right? If that feels funny, check out where your thumb is. Thumb should be like, you know, right almost dead center of the back of the neck. You know, maybe creeping forward just a little bit towards, you know, the treble edge, but not much. Okay, next. Ring and pinky. Ring is going to be on the G string of the 9th fret, and pinky is going to be on the 10th fret of the B. And if you're looking at that, that ought to look like a D chord slid way up here, and you're playing sort of the bottom half of a D chord, not by coincidence, but by design of the way this thing is tuned, which is normal tuning. Hooray. Anyway, right? That good old familiar shape right there. So let's, and honestly, this is the hardest part. Once we get past this, we're golden. Right? Let's do that again. Right? One more time for good measure. You got that? Okay, so then from here, we're going to go down to the G and the B. 1 finger. Okay, one more time from the top. And once again. I'm taking time with this because you're going to use this a lot. You're going to play this for all your guitar playing days. This is a handy dandy little thing to have. All right, now from here, we're on the G and the B, 1 finger. Now back to fuse these together with willpower. We're going to go to the 9th fret of the D and the G. Ring is on D, pinky's on G, 9th fret. Okay, and then go down to the 7th fret right below that. So one more time. And that already sounds done, but wait, there's more. And then now we're going to go to the 9th fret of the A and the D, and then down to the 7th fret of the A and the D. And then on this one, this is going to look like the bottom half of a G chord, right? Just a good old G, cowboy G. It's going to look like these 2 guys right here, what's happening on the A and the D string, because it is. I mean, this harkens back to the cage lesson that we talked a while ago. Comment below if you want me to revisit the cage system. It's a great system. I got nothing bad to say about it. Use it all the time myself. Moving on. So we're right here, and we're going to use ring and pinky. Why ring and pinky? Because we're already kind of set up for that. Right? And so, if we're just going down this thing, there's your ring and the pinky. Ring is on the A, the 9th fret. Pinky's on the 10th fret of the low E. Now, back here on the low E and the A on the 7 and 7, if we were playing like B minor, I mean, you already hear how great it is. It's another little tool to have in your toolbox that gives you some pentatonic expression. Remember, music's a language. Music's just a language. We learn it like we learn any other language. You know, when you're a kid and you don't have much vocabulary to begin with, right? I mean, you know how to ask for another cookie. You know how to ask to go outside, maybe use the bathroom. You know, you've got some conversational stuff, but you don't really, as a kid, you don't have a huge vocabulary, right? Well, A lot of times, I'm just going to take a quick minute to pause on this. A lot of times people will come to me or we'll have conversations in the store. And frankly, this whole pentatonic double stop thing evolved, like I was saying, out of a conversation that happened on the sales floor where, you know, guitar players standing around talking. And sometimes in the conversation, this notion will come up about the order in which someone should learn things. I get that, I see that, and I think that there's certainly things, just like any other, arena or realm in life, the order that you learn it's super important. However, if we're looking at music like language and playing guitar as execution of that language, you learn a language as you need it for the situations that come up in your life. I don't want you to get stuck on this idea of like, well, Nate, that's cool, but before I do double stops, I really need to learn my pentatonic positions all the way up and down the neck. Do you? Do you really? Just start playing guitar, work on what excites you, right? Work on what inspires you, work on what motivates you, right? So it's okay if you get this in your hands and you get it really good, but you can barely play an F bar chord, so what? Right? You're learning to play guitar. There's not we're not trying to, pass the guitar, ACT. So just, if this interests you, just grab hold of it. All right. So there it is. Now, before we leave this kind of thing here, because I made up a little exercise, I want to show it to you, right? Before we leave this thing here, I want to show you this. So you got this, right? There's also this kind of thing here. Whenever I do this, I think of, there's a song that Guns N' Roses did off Use Your Illusion 2, I think, called Civil War. And Slash had a little lick in there that with a wah pedal. And I think that was the first time I was like, I know what that is, right? With this little double stop thing, okay? So what we're gonna do is back to the 10th fret, high E and the B. We're gonna slide up to the 12th fret and then slide back, just like that. Just play the first set of notes and then slide. Let the inertia of your slide be the articulation of the 12th fret. See what I'm saying? I'm only picking it once. I mean, you can go. I think the slide into that second set of notes is a little more savory to me. Anyway, but just try that. And just try messing around with that. Go find you, again, a D major track. And you might say, well, I don't even know how to mess around with it. We'll just start with something basic like, and also a B minor, just a B minor. If you find a B minor track, by the way, if you find a really good track and you care about your other Chords and Coffee companions, or a really good D major track, or just a really good backing track, if you find one, post it on these videos and just say, hey, I had a real good time jamming with this track. That's helpful to me. It's helpful to everybody, okay? So if you find a good track, post it in the comments section of this so we can mess around with it too, right? But when you're doing that, all I'm doing here is I'm going 7 and 9 on the A and D strings, and that already sort of feels like it has legs to it. Then I went to 7 and 7 on the D and the G strings, right? So there's already sort of to the ear this sound of, hey, are those chords? Are those chords? Because it's a couple of notes, and if you add a bass player, right, it starts to sort of form these little tiny chords that are kind of coming and going and making these little wonderful rhythmic stabs that kind of keep the song propelled forward, right? Well, you can also play some pretty stuff too. So let me show you this. So look at this chord here. So this is that ring finger and pinky on the 9th fret. Is where the ring is at on the G, and the pinky is on the 10th fret of the B. But in order to play this bass note, I've got to substitute my ring with my middle. And now I'm playing the D on the 10th fret of the low E in the bass. And And if you want to do something with this guy, because he's just hanging out waiting for a booger to pick or something, right? Why don't you put him on the 7th fret of the high E? This little thing I made up for us, a little exercise. So what am I doing? So I've got this little shape here. And what is this? Well, it is like it's like a D6-9, because I've got a 9 here on the E. I'm playing an A here, so that's just the 5th, doesn't change anything. And then I've got a B up here. So again, I've got my ring finger on the 10th fret of the low E. And then I've got my middle finger on the, I'm skipping the A and I'm skipping the D, not doing anything with them. Got my middle finger on the 9th fret of the G, okay? And then I got my pinky on the 10th fret of the B. So there's that little double stop shape, right? And then index was feeling left out. So I went ahead and put him on the 7th fret of the high E. And if that's uncomfortable for your hand, always check and see what that thumb is doing. If it's doing this, that would be uncomfortable for me. My thumb likes to get back here. As soon as you get stretchy, my thumb likes to kind of find the best sort of fulcrum advantage. I didn't do that naturally. I had to train it. So move your thumb around till your hand feels a little bit better. So that's like the first shape. I'll show you what my right hand is doing here. So the next shape is, it's basically this B minor 11 thing, but it's also just the top of the pentatonic scale on the 7th fret of the low E, the D, and the G. So I'm playing the low E with my middle finger, and then I'm playing, skipping the A, and then the D is with my ring finger, and the G is with my pinky. And that little lick there is, my pinky's already on the G, and then my index finger comes down to the 5th fret, and then pinky comes off the G and plays the 7th fret of the B. And I did that because going just seemed too hard. But it's the same note. You ever do that? I don't. Anyway. And then right here. Now, this is the first thing that this C natural is not in the scale, but this is. So 7 and 7 and 9 and 9 on the D and the G, right? But with the C natural in the bass on the 8th fret. So the whole thing. And with my right hand, what I'm doing is I'm kind of plucking with my ring and my middle of my ring on the G and the B strings, and using my pick to play the low E. If you wanted to, you could come down to this G major 7 kind of thing. And all I'm doing here is 3rd fret, low E, and then index is on 2 and 2 of the D, 2 of the G, and then ring and pinky are hammering on the 4th fret of the D and the G. That little thing. This is, I'll show you that right hand thing in a second, but this is just the same little thing I did on the C, but I'm going on this D major. I'm going 9 and 9, hammering on to 11 and 11 on the D and the G string, and and then doing the same thing on that C where it's 9 and 9, sorry, with the 10th fret on the low E, and then slide down here to the 8th fret, and then hammer on from 7 and 7 to 9 and 9, and then again skipping the A on all these, and then 7 on the low E, skipping the A, ring and pinky on the 7th fret of the D and the G. Ooh, A minor. Hadn't heard that yet. It's fresh. It's amazing what just context will do to a chord. And then 5 and 5 and 5. So skipping the A again, 5 on the middle finger, 5 on the D, 5 on the G, and then hammering on that G again. And remember, it's 2 and 2 on the D and the G to 4 and 4. And then if you want to slide that index finger to the 3rd fret of the low E, then stretch your pinky to the 7th fret and play those harmonics. Whole thing. Just a little something I made up there when I was thinking about double stops. Double stops don't always have to be so straight up pentatonic-y. They can kind of be kind of jazzy and kind of flavorful in a different way. Hey, if you like that and you want me to unpack that some more, oh, by the way, my right hand on... What I'm doing is I'm articulating that one time, and again, picking and plucking, and I'm plucking on the D and the G string, and then doing this chuck chuck right after that with just dead strings. And that's kind of a thing borrowed from like the country, you know, kind of thing, you know, where you're plucking dead strings. So you guys like this kind of stuff? You like it when I make up little exercises like this? Is it helpful to you? I would love if you end up taking that idea and running with it and writing a cool song. Great. Share it with us. We're here to learn from one another. We're here to encourage one another, and we do it every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Central Time. I really appreciate those of you who are watching out in Washington, Dave, California, Tony and Michael, and all the guys that are watching from, you know, Southwest Missouri and the Midwest. Hey, it's just nice to know if you ever want to just think, hey, this is, you know, Jason from, you know, North Carolina or whatever. Just throw that in the comments. It just helps me and everybody else that's involved in getting this out there to know who all is watching. I appreciate you guys so much, and it's fun to do this, and I hope you're having fun too. We will see you next week for another Chords and Coffee.